What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Awakening World. It's a beautiful weekend in which we're going to be really exploring how we can have more intimacy in our lives, deeper connection. And we're going to be looking at how we can have deeper connection to ourselves, to each other, and to whatever you might call divinity or source. You know, if you think about your greatest moments in life, they almost always are moments of deep connection. Lovemaking, connecting with an animal, connecting with nature, connecting with God, whatever you call that, divinity. Those are our greatest moments. And so to this whole weekend, we're looking at what are the obstacles that get in the way of that? What are the ways we can improve our connection to each other, to source, and to ourselves? And I'm really happy because all the people that Trish and I wanted to be on tonight's show said yes. And so we brought back actually three of our favorite presenters and to tell you a little bit more about the theme. And our presenters, here is my wonderful colleague and co-host, the lovely Trish Wright.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this Friday night. And I'm so excited about, that I'm just, my driving force is connection. And I've spent my entire life working in ways and developing community and myself in ways to better connection. So I'm delighted to introduce my coach, who really walked me through some just profound, tragic moments in my life. And I'm so grateful for you. Felipe Lewis has dedicated himself to supporting people in their growth towards sovereignty and creating events and learning environments that invite participants to step into their full sensuality, claim greater power and sovereignty around erotic desires and boundaries for everything. Speak with you.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
I'd also love to introduce a new friend who I just met this year. And I've been watching you work your magic for a little while now, Ilsa, and I'm incredibly excited about your new project, which I'm not going to blow right now. But if you've been following her, you know. Ilsa Fay is a global women's transformation coach, award-winning filmmaker, creative director, and founder of Erotica Film Festival. Raised with a deep love of learning and belief in the energetic and subtle realms as well as the material world, Ilsa continues to blaze as a leader in authentic erotic integration. I'm delighted to have you both here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Trish Scott.
Well, I wanted to introduce the next person because she's one of my favorite human beings on the planet. And I'm talking about Viraja Prema. And you may have seen her on this show before or on Facebook. She did a beautiful post just today about motherhood. I loved that post, Viraja. And there's something really beautiful that you're here tonight, kind of wearing your sacred sexuality, uh, inner intimacy coach cap. And I love that you lead a balanced life, and you've also very successfully raised two sons. Um, and there's something beautiful about that balance. So I just want to acknowledge that. Everybody, go to her Facebook page and read her post about motherhood. It's beautiful.
Mm.
And she has also, in addition to raising a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old, she's helped thousands of clients during the past 30 years. I guess she started when she was 5. Um, Through her love and intimacy coaching and programs. She's a master energy worker, healer, and facilitator, and she has traveled all over the world. We were talking just before the show with Ilsa, and Ilsa's down in Tasmania. And Roger says, "Oh yeah, I've hiked all through Tasmania." And I was like, "Wow, I haven't been to Tasmania." So truly a world traveler. I'm going to bring everybody back on. And I'm going to ask, and I haven't prepped anybody with these questions, so there you have it. What is a personal block you've had in your life to intimacy, whether it's with another human being, with yourself, or with Great Spirit? And what is a tool or a practice that either helped you with that block or helps you to manage that block in present time? Okay. Is that question clear to everybody? And I'm going to ask Raja to go first because I know that she's an inner intimacy coach. And I don't know if you're going to talk about inner intimacy, but it kind of starts there. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to put the spotlight on you first, Raja.
Mm-hmm. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Hello, everybody. Good evening. And thank you, Scott, for having us all here. Nice to see you again, Trish. So I would start with answering that question of like what has blocked or challenged my intimacy. Um, Probably the thing that has been the most humbling and relevant for me to discover is the way that I would and can actually not be present, like actually not be home at all for the experience of the intimacy. And the full embodied, connected, present, aware, conscious, engaged type of intimacy that I'm talking about. So when I talk about like intimacy or any type of like intimacy, it's like there's the physicality, there's the emotionality, there's where's our mind and what's happening energetically or spiritually in that moment. And I know now that there were many reasons throughout my life and when I was young where it felt too scary to be in my body, where it was that the experience of the intimacy wasn't meeting my needs. It was actually the opposite. It was too scary, traumatizing, disconnected, misattuned. So my particular go-to was to go whoop and leave my body, to exit, to escape. And I believe there's intimacy in everything. So one of the places that I'm still working on the embodiment and around it could be around challenging conversations that have to do with money. So like I can go whoop, I can feel myself starting to exit, and then I lose my ground and I lose my power, I lose my ability to connect with what my truth is and also like communicate to the other person or negotiate appropriately. So learning how to notice, like actually take people's feedback initially was very, very hard. I felt a lot of shame and even a little confused when people would be like that learned and discovered these ways of my being. Then I was close enough that they would give me the feedback. I would it would be hard for me to hear it at first because I've always been there in so many ways. But I realized I was there in so many ways for other people to perform or do or be or engage for them, but that I wasn't fully here for me. So the coming back to me has been a vulnerable process, and it's needed a lot of safe space, a lot of tenderness, a lot of reassurance, and a lot of relearning, like how to relearn and train myself through my body awareness, my breath, my communicating what I'm feeling, discovering what I'm feeling, expressing and moving what I'm feeling, like rediscovering what pleasure is truly for me, not just going along with the motions for somebody else. And what my voices, my thoughts, my needs, my preferences. And you know, it's many years ago now that I first started learning about compassionate communication. I think it was in 2000. And that was one of the aha moments. I was like, oh my God, everybody has needs. Like, I can have all of these needs. Everybody can have all of these needs. And then I've grown and expanded those skill sets, and Scott's been amazingly a teammate and helping me, and thank you so many people in that. So finding my way to me to be present for the intimacy has been my pathway to really be engaged in the world in the way that I feel like my soul wants me to be. You're muted.
Um, Again, you know, as a mother, most of my friends that are mothers, learning to make your needs a priority and a high enough priority is such a big deal, because there's just this natural primal instinct: take care of the child, take care of the children, take care of the family, give. And I really appreciate how important it is to support, especially mothers, to that your needs are just as important, you know, especially once your children are past the survival, you know, stage.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
you're an intimacy betrayal coach. That's an interesting combination of words, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. But can you give just a little insight as to what that means?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm celebrating a new claiming of that as a title, because I very much been, like Trish was saying, very naturally attracted to connection and all things about connection and how to have more connection and intimacy, and that's really like the lifeblood of life. And what the intimacy betrayal coach is, I'm helping guide people through the territory of having had the experiences of misattunement, abuse, addictions, lying, cheating, or you know disrespect, gaslighting, all these dynamics in which the safety that the intimacy is designed to have, or that we're seeking on a neurological and biological level, is actually ruptured and damaged. So it's a process of helping that recovery and the repair and the reclaiming their own beingness, and then getting to rejoice in who they really are, independent of any of those circumstances.
Well, thank you for the beautiful work you're doing, and of course, we'll be chatting more with you. I'm going to turn it over to my wonderful partner, Trish, for a moment. Trish,
Viraja.
what's your response to? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your appreciation of Raja.
Oh, I was just really appreciating that you brought in presence and and really the attunement piece. Um, because I think that in the global society that we live in, attunement isn't really something that we're taught from the infancy, really. There's some place where it gets severed, and I'm sure we have someone who knows a little bit about those places there. They'll come on a little later. Um, and so I really appreciate that you brought in presence, and you brought in showing up for yourself, and you brought in attunement, because that is incredibly important in even being with the level of intimacy and vulnerability that shows up,
Mm,
right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you.
And for me, it's evolved this understanding of what intimacy looks like, what is the boundaries to it, or what like keeps me holds me back or holds my clients back. And as you all know, I'm a big fan of empathy. I grew up in a pretty scary, dangerous childhood, with a lot of, my father wasn't very emotionally there. He was doing the very like stereotypical white American man thing, and he just wasn't there. So the empathy piece I never gathered until my 30s when I really started to dive into Scott's work. And that was one of the big pieces of actually getting to know myself, Viraja. You know, like, oh gosh. And the piece that I'm looking at right now is accountability and impact, and how to come back from conflict, and really cultivating those skills, and teaching my clients how to cultivate those skills is acknowledgement of impact, and taking accountability for their movement in a certain experience, you know?
I want to say that you have been a very good influence on me on that. I'm always finding myself when I'm working with Trish, am I saying something that's like, overly white, or overly white male privileged, or overly, baby boomer speak? So thank you for helping me to be a little bit more conscious and accountable to my thoughts and my actions.
Well, Scott, I love that you're taking that on and taking it in. Not everyone does that. And, um, I appreciate your attunement to other people's experience. So it's just important. We're changing the world by being more compassionate and loving and understanding, forgiving, attuning, and learning about each other's triggers.
We've talked about this when we've done shows about people coming back together despite different political beliefs. And look, we have no influence on what Putin does, or what Trump does, or what Biden does. But we have such an influence on how we treat other people. Such an influence. I am eager to hear what Ilsa and Philippe's answers are to that question. So we'll go to Philippe next.
Oof. I was thinking what got in the way. What got in the way of intimacy for me was probably the discovery of the limitations of my emotional body. The reaching the limits of my emotional body, and discovering that fairly early on. I had a girlfriend who had a lot of trauma, and the way her trauma was being expressed. Eventually, after about 3 years, I found myself waking up one day and everything looked dark. And I called her and I said, I can't do this anymore. And that was the first time I ever discovered that I had limits, that there was a point where I just couldn't keep going. That emotionally, I had found my limits. And so later on, I kept on growing and I kept on having experiences. Every once in a while, I would hit my limit again, or I would get upset, or I would get angry, or it would seem like I would just be fuming and I just wouldn't be able to focus. But it wasn't until my son was born and I really discovered what it meant to run out of steam, and for my emotional body to fall down on its knees and to be stuck, sometimes for days, sometimes for months, sometimes even for years, being in this place, in this kind of in-between place that I later discovered was part of the polyvagal curve. And that also got me interested into attachment theory, where I discovered that I used to lean heavily towards avoidance. And so that gives me a sense of, oh, this is what's going on. My emotional body hasn't developed the strength or the endurance to fully show up consistently. And in fact, I run out of emotional stamina, of emotional resources relatively quickly. And so what that's gotten me to do is to really slow down. Instead of just moving through things and not really paying attention, because I wasn't feeling it, I started slowing down so I could feel more. And I've explained it to people, like it's a little bit like my emotions are like the bubbles in a lava lamp. They kind of slowly move up and eventually they pop. And when they pop, I can feel something. And the rest of the time, it's just feel tight, and I feel like things are difficult and I'm fuming and I'm having a hard time. And then eventually I realize what's going on. So as a way to compensate for that, I've just developed my intelligence in order to try to make sense of what's going on. Even if I can't really feel what's going on, I could make sense of it and I can understand it. And so when the feelings come, I can say, that makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And I can sort of trace back the process so I can learn from it. So yeah, it's been a long process, and I can say I turned a corner on fatherhood, even though my son is now becoming a teenager. He's going to be a teenager soon, so that's going to throw me for another loop. But I notice when I get stuck, and I notice when I don't have the right reaction to him, and he calls me out on it. So we really call each other out, and we're really quick to apologize and just do a do-over.
Beautiful. You know, there's a term that I find is really useful, which is an intimacy threshold. And when we are engaging in emotional intimacy with each other, or even physical, sexual intimacy, all of us have a threshold. And it's helpful for us to know what our threshold is, and really helpful to convey that and communicate it to our friend or our lover before we hit it, so that they don't think
hopefully.
Hopefully. But it takes a lot of work with a coach. It takes a lot of emotional intelligence. It takes courage to say, as good as this feels, I'm getting scared, or my rejection story is coming up, or my being overwhelmed, my engulfment story is coming up, whatever it might be, So thank you for the wonderful work. And we'll learn more about the science of attachment on the next round when we come back to Philippe. Ilsa Fay. First of all, thank you for being with us, Ilsa. I was really happy when you said yes. And,
thank you so much for having me. I love speaking to both you and Trish, and it's always really exciting to come from Australia into a more American or European connection and community. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, and thank you for giving us that international flavor. I forgot to mention that we have people watching on Unify. So people on Unify, welcome. Let us know where you're from geographically, because Ilsa, we get people all over the world watching on Unify, which is really cool. So what comes up for you? What would you like to share about your personal journey?
Yeah, I so love this topic, and it was so beautiful to hear, both the responses already, and, really feeling into, my journey with intimacy in the last 2 years has been very deliberate and intentional. My part of, I think, the way people come into the world is to learn certain things, and my nature is to be very visionary and to be quite a chameleon. And the chameleon for me is both a gift, but also comes through from receiving non-consensual experiences as a child, not just physical, but also emotional and psychological. And the way that I guess the way I responded to that was to distort and twist and change and see if I could become pleasing or appealing or create safety for myself in the family unit. And so because I've had that kind of chameleon nature of being able to really be anything to anybody and do, and then the gifts of that of being really able to do anything as well, multifaceted, in artistry and tech skills and languages, what that's given me is a recognition that when there's too much chameleon energy that's coming through from trauma, there's no intimacy that gets built with anything, because you're just touching on the surface. So this has been quite a journey for me. And so, my journey into intimacy has actually been one of recognizing that I have to commit. I have to commit to my own deep value, because the values that I had around my own personal worth and value was that I was only valuable and worthy and loved and approved of if I could modify and compromise the truth of who I was, depending on each circumstance and situation. parents, school, friendship groups, boyfriends, work, career, it was different groups of friends. So there was that constant changeability of the personality, of what was being represented, of what was being self-approved of. And so now, as I've kind of moved into adulthood and I'm also a mum, I also have a teenager, teenage son, just turned 13 this year. Yeah. And it's a wild ride, with teenagers. There's so much more to consider. But that journey has really brought me into, who and what are my values? Like the true values, not the values that I think make me appealing or that make people happy with me or that people think is good, where I'm not going to then receive conflict or criticism or feedback or judgment. But what is the true values that I have? And what I've found when I have, been, directly in a committed relationship with those values, one of those for me has been, I know we'll talk about it later, but has been the Erotica Film Festival. When I have deeply committed to Eros and to eroticism and to like the deep personal journey and soul journey that I'm here to share and deliver and experience, that then life has thrown massive challenges at me to test the commitment of intimacy to the thing that I want to build intimacy with. Yeah.
Yes. Scott's back here typing. He's like, "This is so up your alley." I was like, "Yeah, it's true." So as someone who was considered sort of like a fearful avoidant, moved to more secure. Like, don't get me wrong, like I still wobble in the middle somewhere, But in that sense of having this childhood that was scary, and having a dad who wasn't there to contort to get needs met. So this is how it starts, is like you get your needs met, right? And you need them to get your needs met for attention and connection and time and even like food and clothing and love and all of those things. And, when you get into that place of actually diving into why I do the things that I do, and then you start to really get into integrity with your value system. And your value system can move and change, right? So what was valid for me 10 years ago isn't as valid as it is today. So we'll say, like, one of the things that I value more today than I ever have is empathy and actually getting curious about your experience, Ilsa. Like that, and I align myself, right, with people who also have that value. Something, so it's getting the intimacy of getting into integrity with who you are. That means like your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, your behaviors, your truth, your values, and moving from that place is so deeply intimate. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm drooling over here, y'all. You guys are great.
I'm bringing everybody else up for a minute. As I heard, especially what Ilsa said just now, it reminded me that we really have the challenge of living in a culture that creates completely unrealistic ideas of the opposite sex. Most boys, their sexual experience for the first 5 to 10 years of their life is masturbating to airbrushed pornography, which gives a very, very false idea of what sexuality is, of what a woman is, of what real sex looks like. And likewise, I believe most women grow up with this whole cultural indoctrination of what beauty is and the way they're supposed to look and the way they're supposed to be in order to get their needs met. And all three of you are beautiful women. And I'm sure I've gone through that challenge of, wow, I can get certain needs met by using my beauty. And then, hey, where's my integrity? Which is part of what I heard Ilsa saying. So, next question. what's, as a coach or from your personal life, a way that we can acknowledge cultural indoctrination or a parental, but mostly a cultural indoctrination that's not serving us, that's not life affirming? And how do we shift? And I'll start with my co pilot, Trish, here.
You love me so much.
Yeah, I really do.
I hear you loving me in that question. Oh, this is so what I'm doing right now. This is the work that I'm shifting into, helping people see in themselves as well. And I love that, Scott. Thank you for bringing up the beauty standard piece, because a lot of our social programming is based in hierarchy and based in the creation of someone or someone's being less than human. And we get to, in this lifetime, be the web, the individual pieces of this web, where, like the connection points to actually bring up and change and shift and work together to humanize each other. So one of the things that, I'm definitely researching a lot of how white supremacy hurts the white man in general, and how one of the things that I have deep, deep compassion for right now is the mold, that I'm saying that if this person wants to follow the social programmed rules, that they will follow these sort of things. I'm not saying like everyone participates in this, but that there's this, that generically they're taught not to empathize, they're taught not to attune, they're taught not to feel their feelings. There's all this weird programming to tell them to be a man, and whatever that actually means. Like, who knows what that means? That's individual to each person, right? Whatever a man looks like to me, or Scott, or Felipe, or Roger, or like, that's very different. So it's actually, for me, looking at these intersections of how humans have dehumanized each other, and really bringing back into compassion, bringing back into humanization, and noticing that each individual person is having their experience, and get to love them there.
Beautiful. Would any of our other presenters like to comment on this topic? Just jump in.
I'll go. I think it's impossible not to be faced both with conformity and individuality. I think that every human's lived experience includes encountering conformity or narratives or things that lack nuance, because how these sort of packaged, themed ways of being, or roles, or identities are inherently used to bring people together as groups. And they give people a sense of, are you with me or are you not with me? Are you like me or are you not like me? To create a sense of safety for the people who are like you, and to sort of protect from those people who are not like you, because if you encounter them too much, it has a dismantling effect. And so simultaneously, human beings have to try to make sense of the world, because they can't see everything. So there's also this tendency to simplify and to remove the nuances, because, well, first of all, you don't know. Like, we don't know what people are made of in this group, or even if we know each other. Like, even if you know the person that you're with, your lover, your partner, you've known them for 20 years, you still don't know things about them. And so to discover individuality requires an energy, and it requires time, and it requires attention. And its attention is something that we only have a little bit of. And we're discovering how less and less we have of it, because of all the notifications and all the social media and the 8 different communication apps that we have on our phones, and all the other apps that are trying to get our attention. So to get into the nuances, it's difficult to really find the individuality that allows us to connect deeply with each person that we love. and the number of people that we love is growing every day. It's extremely difficult to not be finding ourselves in between this kind of conformity, not just because of wanting to belong or wanting to know who and what we belong to, but also wanting to understand who are our friends, who are not our friends, but also trying to understand what's the world made of. And so as we start, there's a great book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance that speaks of this sort of like trying to name and divide and name and divide and name and divide, but it's also, there's a loss there. There's a loss of the essence of something. And so we're faced with this lack of nuance that allows us to understand the world, but grossly. And then there's simultaneously a desire to go deeper into the what I would call the soul of each being and each human, and to be able to divide our attention between the two. I think it's an impossible task, and I think we do a great job as humans. And I don't think it will ever stop. I don't think there will ever be a moment where there will not be narratives and will not be identities that are erasive, as well as giving us something to belong to.
Oh, thank you for that. You're getting Trish Trinkles. Trishkles. Just made up a new word there. Dorina, coming to us from Ecuador, writes, intimacy, into me see. And so kind of along with that, a reminder to everybody watching, please start giving us thoughts, comments, and questions. I'll do my best to scan what's going on in our Zoom room, what's going on Facebook. And a reminder for everybody who is watching on Facebook or on one of the YouTube channels, come on into our Zoom room. It's really easy. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com. There's a promo code that'll get you all of the links to all of our shows free, and the promo code is New Friend. So you go to globalpeacetribe.com, put in the promo code of New Friend, which says register, and you'll get the links to all of our shows for the next 2 months, all the way through the end of June. We do a show every Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday morning with a particular theme. And of course, this weekend, the theme is Tools for Deeper Intimacy, Into Me See. And so with that, and thank you, Dorina, for the prompt, my next question, and I'll just open it up to anybody who wants to respond. What are some tools that you teach, that you use for deeper intimacy with self-love, self-intimacy? And I'd love to hear maybe from even all of you, because it's such an important part. So I'll call on Viraja, because we haven't heard from her for a moment, and I know that this is something she teaches.
Yes, hi, thank you. So, life is happening everywhere. We're relating, there's information coming at us, at me, at all of us from all these directions. So when I'm looking at like myself, I'm actually looking out also at everything that's happening in my life. So it's an amazingly rich laboratory. And if we're in this mode in life where we are feeling a little bombarded or attacked, it's really natural for us to get more defensive, to get more in survival mode, where it's like, you're doing that to me, that's happening over there, or you're wrong, or kind of to help protect ourselves. So very natural and very normal. Of course that's happening. It's part of our survival instincts. So in shifting into a perspective and an interaction with ourself and the world, it's more like inner intimacy. It needs to involve like safety. So even introducing the idea when we feel safe, or having an opportunity to like even explore what it means to focus on ourselves from a safe environment. So in the ideal perfect scenario, we would have been getting all of this information when we were young of like, you're safe, I'm good, I'm here with you, it's okay, you can feel what you're feeling, you can discover who you are, you can think what you think, and you're loved and you're connected and you're safe. You're not going to risk or jeopardize any part of your well-being if you actually do focus on yourself and you are actually who you are. So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, and Elsa and Philippe, like some of us are needing to relearn and repair and connect to what's true for us. And we really have needed and do need another being, mammal body being there to give us this capacity within ourselves. So co-regulation and interaction so that we can find our own place of center and well-being. But what's happening is that most of us are more activated in like survival and what can I do to make sure I don't die? And so we're pointing all these fingers and being very reactive, and it's just making us get further and further from the core of who we truly are. So to kind of spin that around, it's actually the question I ask is like, what is this situation showing me about me? And what do I need? And what am I feeling? What is alive inside my being? Yes. So and again, we're very creative in like how we can like position these stories of like what's going on, where am I going to be attacked, so we can physically withdraw ourselves, we can mentally check out, we can emotionally shut down, and we can spiritually can disconnect from source, from each other. So the inner intimacy path and optimizing inner intimacy is like discovering, okay, where's my tank low, and how can I fill it up? And the way that we can start to where we need to be in order to fill up our personal tanks of our intimacy and our connection with ourselves, again, is in a place of safety. Otherwise it's not going to happen. So there's asking ourselves appropriate questions, getting the appropriate support people that we trust, getting ourselves in an environment, getting myself in an environment where I feel resourced and safe, so that my nervous system can kind of down-regulate and relax, and then almost like my little feelers can start to open up to be able to like take in the nourishment. And it's like, I'm like, oh, here I am. To be honest, I had this experience this morning where I was like, oh, like life is too much. I'm overwhelmed. And I, just grabbed my shoes and went out the door and went for a walk. And the walk happened to be along this path with this beautiful little creek that's flowing now this time of year, and the birds all around. And I sat down by a waterfall and took some breaths, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm okay. Like, I'm connected. There's nature here. And now what do I need? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? So increasing resiliency is a really important thing for our own optimizing inner intimacy, in my opinion. So it's like somebody was saying their intimacy threshold or something like that earlier. It's like, yeah, Scott was saying that it's like how much can I actually connect with myself? Like if it's been completely foreign, or like the men are raised like it's not okay to feel your feelings or do the thing that actually is connected to another being with empathy. Like if we start to go into that territory, it can be really scary. It can be like, oh no fly zone. Like if I go in this, if I do this too much, I might be shot and killed. So there's still that maybe in our own imprinting and in mass consciousness. So it's like the being loving with like how much we can take in at a time, and learning and growing this capacity that we can actually be resting in a center of who we are and have a healthy, easeful, open, safe experience in our body, mind, heart, emotional, spiritual aspects of ourselves. And so the process is really understanding where we're at and having compassion for ourselves, having empathy of like what happened in our lives to got us here, and then learning and growing our possibilities and our reserves and our toolbox of what way I can relate to myself, and what way can I have others support me in relating, and just being as gentle and loving as possible, and then using all those mirrors that come around, and like if I get triggered by those, be like, oh, what's this showing me about me? What's this showing me about me? And how can I take radical responsibility for that inside of me in my discovery? Yeah.
There's a lot of really beautiful wisdom right there, really beautiful. And I'm going to bring Ilsa and Philippe back on. If there's anything you want to add or riff on the beautiful yumminess of all that Viraja just shared.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way you communicate, Raja, about, about this theme and this topic, and the way that you share, your experience and your wisdom around it. So my gratitude to you. And what was really coming up for me around that was, I love to just go back to like the basics. I remember when I first started to come into my awakening journey, and the first thing that I really proactively initiated for myself was to write a self-care list. What are the things that make me feel good, that I know that are always going to be available for me? Going for a walk, having a bath, self-pleasure, cooking a meal, asking for a hug, these just a list of very simple, easy to access ways to reconnect to myself and to build intimacy. And this is something that I share, as a coach. I'm not an intimacy coach, but it's a similar, I'm not an intimacy with others coach, but the intimacy with self, for me, what has really deeply supported is bringing in the active masculine energy. So I found that working with women in particular, there can be the shadows and the distortions of falling into emotional chaos and being in the drama of I'm a dark feminine, and kind of getting caught up in the glorification of that without having it deeply grounded. So then what happens is the emotional body takes over not just your own experience of life, but it takes over your relationships, and it takes over your career and your ability to focus and be present to self and life and children. And so one of the tools that I work with is primarily activating the masculine, who brings through structure, consistency, a plan. And so the way that then I just weave that into my life is every day I just do one thing. It's just, and it's a non-negotiable. Every day I do one beautiful thing, even if that's just, I have a really long shower, or I take that extra 15 minutes to put my makeup on, or I put on a great pair of shoes. It doesn't have to be always a 2-hour process of spiritual catharsis or, or intimacy or dialogues. It can be something so simple and so pleasurable that is constantly reaffirming the value that you have for yourself and staying in integrity with that. And that's a really key aspect of being a mom or being a parent of anybody, as well as working effectively and having a great relationship and being deeply attuned and of high standards of value within yourself. So that's the way that I work with it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this so much. It just makes me excited to talk about connection and intimacy. My fastest trick is, and you all can play with me, is just to ask not just how someone's doing, but what does it feel like, sensation and emotion in your body. Can you give me a snapshot of a sensation, physical sensation, or an emotion that's arising for you? And when shared together, like, can I play with you, Ilsa, for a second?
Yeah.
So if I'm like, oh, what does this moment feel like for you? What is an emotion or a sensation that is happening in your body right now?
I have excitement through through the back of my sacral.
What does that feel like? What does excitement
It feels like tingles and vibrations.
See, you feel it. You're here, and I'm like, oh God, I can imagine that. I'm feeling this really heartwarming opening. Like it feels open. My heart is opening, and I feel my body feels really warm.
There's something about the way, just as you've been sharing, there's something about the verbalizing it out loud to another person that then allows you to feel that person if you're in consent of feeling it. Because I also felt the heart expansion, I felt the warmth, and it's so beautiful to feel you in that way, across the globe through a screen. Yeah.
And what the thing about it is not going into story. It's not about asking what you're feeling or what you're actually doing in the world. It's actually dropping you into this present moment to connect my body to your body.
Beautiful tool. I love that.
And it's really quick. So anytime I get in connection with another person who I do have consent with to do that, it's just that moment. It's like, hey, do you want to drop in with me? So thank you for playing.
Pleasure.
Trish, I love what you did there, because I've done something similar, but with feelings instead of sensations. So I would say, or I would have clients do this, couples do this with each other, but I would do this with lovers and partners, where I would say, I feel this way. And they would just say, oh, I hear you feel this way, and that makes me feel, and they would just kind of drop in and allow the feeling to arise or to bubble up. And then they would speak that. And then it'd be like a dance of feelings, in the same way that you were doing it, what I perceived it, you doing it as a dance of sensations. And it's just a way to connect by sort of removing the story from the conversation, because the story is great, but it's also, well, it fills our brains and keeps us busy. But it's not necessary. I mean, I love it as a way of connection personally, but it's too fast.
Beautiful. Trish is giving me the finger.
Hold on, wait for me. No, and I love that. I've just simplified it so that language around the feeling. I've noticed that the sort of, we'll call it neurodivergent people, is like it's easier for them to understand sensation and emotion as a separation. Because the feelings, especially, I don't know why I work with a lot of avoidance, but I have a tendency to, that they're so disconnected that dropping it to an actual sensation is easier for them to share from that point. It is from a feeling, which feels like, oh my God, a feeling, I have to share a feeling, so it's like a sensation in your body or an emotion, then it's less pressure, it seems like. That's some of the strategy, if you want to know the back end of it.
Questions from the audience, and this is a really good one from Dorina down in Ecuador. She asks, question to all wonderful panelists and participants. What about intimacy with non-human beings? Can you share an experience, lesson, or realization about it? Whether it was an animal, plant, entity, and I'll add the possibility of divinity. So let's talk a little bit about our relationships with non-human entities. I love that question. Who wants to go first?
Okay.
Ilsa.
Yeah, I'm happy to share first. For me, the question is so beautiful, and also for me, it feels like, intimacy in itself doesn't distinguish between a human connection and a non-human connection. Intimacy is a vibration within the body, within the heart, within the soul, that's combined with the decision to prioritize and continue to cultivate intimacy. So, I have a really deep relationship with God or with consciousness or divinity. As much as I'm willing to stay in an intimate relationship with my relationship to God consciousness. And so I feel like, when we prioritize, and it's an active, I think a lot of spiritual and conscious work can sometimes be then start to integrate into lives as a passive experience. And in fact, everything that we're doing as conscious humans does actually need to be an active decision, an active commitment, an active laying your heart on the altar of life, of intimacy, of love, of devotion, in order to ensure that intimacy stays alive. And that can be, devotionally tending to a plant each day, and that's the cultivating of the intimacy and the deep listening of what that plant has to share, just as much as it is with a child or a partner, or or an animal, or wild, or even a landscape. Since I moved down to the south of Australia, which is called Tasmania, and it's very mountainous here. It's beautiful. And what called me here was the mountains. I actually needed to come here and have an intimate relationship with the landscape, because it had gifts to share with me and things to teach me and share, and I had things for it as well. So I think that, when you're looking at intimacy per se, it's really about your commitment and your willingness to lay your heart on the line for what you want intimacy with.
Beautiful. I'm so glad that you expressed all that, because it is so important for us to have a real relationship to, I like to imagine it as Divine Mother. I'm kind of adding everybody here. And for myself, I've been single for the last 2.5 years. And on the one hand, I've cultivated so many deeper friendships online, but a lot of my intimacy needs have been met through my connection to nature. And it's so important for us to cultivate that. So, who else would like to respond to Doreena's wonderful question? Okay, you're up, Philippe.
Everything I learned about touch, I learned from my cat. She was a Persian kitty, and she had just been shipped to me from my ex-girlfriend right after I'd moved to California. And next thing I know, I've got this cat who would not let me touch her. And over a period of months, I learned to touch her. And then I realized she never said a word. And then that made me realize that she had taught me everything I needed to know through her own way of touching me back, or the way that she would move her body. And that got me to rediscover my body in a whole new way, through the somatic lens, through the primal lens. And then eventually that got me back through the emotional, to the lens of the emotional body. But just to connect deeply with an animal, and for me, it's always been cats, really got me to understand that there is a language there that is older than we are as humans. It's as old as we've been animals, which is before being humans. It's as old as the mammalian brain, and the fact that we have mirror neurons. And this is why we relate so well with pets, is because they have mirror neurons as well. And so we connect with them. We don't know what it means to them, and they don't know what it means to us, but somehow we connect. And so connecting at a somatic and primal level has been sort of my saving grace, sort of this rediscovery of who I really am, beyond being a man or a human or a father or a partner. So that's the lesson that I've gained from that, is there are things happening inside of me that allows me to connect to the world and to nature and to other animals that goes way beyond my capacity to even perceive it at a conscious level.
Beautiful. I'm going to read a response from the audience. Sarah writes, when I visited Sequoia National Park, I stood next to a monarch sequoia tree and placed my hands on the bark. I felt so small and so safe at the same time. The energy is something I will always remember. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I do want to get more responses. Anna Ohm is asking for a prayer request for her puppy, little Arnold. He's not eaten for 2 days now, so maximum grace for little Arnold. puppy of our own. Viraja, we haven't heard from you for a bit.
I'm inspired to share something that I think you might relate to, Scott.
Oh, good.
And it's the intimacy with home.
Hmm.
Yeah, Scott and I are both in a transition portal of leaving our home sanctuaries. And I had one recently also with at the beginning of this year with a home that I'd set up with my beloved at the time, and then this one, and what all of these compounding are really, really revealing like the depth of which and the multidimensionality of my connection and my intimacy with the spaces that I live in, and with the land, and with the elements, and with the structures, and the organization of all of the pieces within it. I feel like I'm going back lifetimes, even if anyone can relate to like being a temple keeper, and the intimacy of the cultivation of the energy and the portal, if you will, of the space. And I've also been experiencing a lot of grief, to be honest, because like it's the when needing to shift out of those places that I've gone so deep with, it's a big surrender and letting go of something that's a very, very, very deeply sacred and special to me. And I feel like I'm getting layers of more understanding and maybe also processing some of the lifetimes in which, or times, and even this lifetime of needing to leave a space and a home that fell in love with, to be honest, and was sharing love and generating energy. And as Ilsa was saying, like I'm really co-creating and committed and in this exchange, and then it shifts, and and it's hard, especially when it's not my first choice, or not my choice in the matter. So yeah, thanks, Trish. Yeah, tender heart for me right now. Yeah, I'm leaving my home the end of this month, and Scott is leaving his home this weekend. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah.
I'd love to share a little bit about grief. Well, two things. I love that you talked about cats, Felipe, because the most intimate connection that I have is with Mr. Winston Wolfe, and like sometimes he'll hug me, and I'm like, how do you know that I need you right now? And then there's something that you taught me, Felipe. That I'm going to butcher the saying, but how it lives in my head is betrayal is the most intimate that we can be with another person. And grief is the most, how I've understood it recently, is grief is the most intimate that I can be with myself. And
Absolutely.
it's been, and just sort of like this entire year had this theme of grief for me that transitions um, outside of my control, right? So really being in the let go for me. So some of the posts that I just brought up, that I just posted like 2 or 3 days ago, was that grief brings me clarity. It brings me the closest to my heart and my desires, and we'll call it the shadow or the darkness, or places that I don't normally touch. And I'm so deeply intimate because I don't get to touch that level of vulnerability in myself. Oh, it's been wild and juicy.
Trish, your audio is coming in and out, to be honest. It's kind of coming in and out. It's not consistent. And we want to have the complete Trish experience. Could you repeat just how you opened grief is and fill in the blank? Because your audio went out. It's kind of like, and the winning lottery numbers are and 31. It's like,
Right. So grief is the most intimate that I can be with myself. That it's the place where I have the vulnerability of the loss that I feel, the vulnerability of which I don't normally touch. Like there's places of sadness and let go and even anger and fury that I don't normally touch. Like that is literally the most intimate I've ever been with myself, is to be with the level of discomfort that this brings up. Go read my post. I clarified it like ghee. I did some work on that post so that I could share. It's just deeply intimate to be in
Send the
there.
link. I want to read that. I want to read it.
Okay.
Good stuff. And I want to add to that grief is a process of integration. So the more you do it, the closer you are to yourself, or the more yourself you are, because you're bringing more pieces that otherwise were not integrated. So there's more of you, the more you grieve.
There's a lot of me.
This is resonating. We're getting a lot of responses from people. And yeah, grief is up for me because I'm leaving a home that my wife and I bought together. And then she died very shortly after we bought this home. It was the first time either of us had actually owned a home. And so a lot of thoughts are coming up about her. And a word that I find really valuable that helps me with the mourning process. And my wife died a long time ago now. But the word is bittersweet. It's bitter that she's gone. And it's so sweet that I still miss her. Yeah. And so if we can find that bitter sweetness, not getting lost in the tragedy or the drama of loss, but feeling the bitterness, feeling the sadness, feeling the anger, if that's what is alive, but also the sweetness of our care, right? Our discomfort is in direct proportion to the love or the memories that we have, the love that we're missing, the memories that we have. And so it's bittersweet. So I just wanted to put that out there. We have somebody from watching on Unify who's been asking us our mission. This is her first time watching The Awakening World. So she's, what's your mission? What's your mission? That's very sweet. We are a multi-denominational forum, if you will. And our mission is just to help raise consciousness, to imagine that we're living on a planet where humanity must awaken. We must wake up and create more healthy, sustainable choices in how we relate to the world, to the environment, to each other. And so every weekend we take a different topic, whether it is social justice or racial justice or environmental considerations or our relationships to ourselves or to each other, and we explore it. And usually you'll notice that although everybody who's on the show has written a book or has a website or is a teacher or coach, but usually we talk about our own personal experiences because we recognize that we all are learning and growing together. So that's what our mission is all about. All right, we are kind of getting to that time now where we start learning more about what each of you do. And so I'm going to go to Ilsa first because she does something really, really cool. She does the Erotica Film Festival, and we'll go to the website and look at it in a moment. But first of all, just tell us a little bit about how this came around for you to create the Erotica Film Festival.
Yeah, oh gosh. So Erotica actually started as in Melbourne, in Australia, as a one night only experiential boutique performance art night. And the founding premise of it is Eros, not so much the Eros of sex and sexuality, but the Eros of the primordial life force of chaos. So it's energy. And so the way that we operated Erotica was to bring through, you know, the performance arts, to bring through eroticism, to bring through sensuality, not just in performance, but in guided processes. We did orgasmic chanting. It was like a real collective piece of interaction. And then, of course, global events happened and we couldn't really meet in person so much anymore. And so what came through kind of through the erotica process for me was that actually it incredibly was quite destructive around my parenting because of the lack of understanding of what erotica was and what it was teaching and celebrating. I received quite a lot of projection around doing things that were inappropriate as a mum. And so I had some kind of custodial issues around that. And it really prompted me to, to decide, what do I truly value in terms of what's really important to me? And so erotica is so deeply important because, my son at the time that erotica was first birthed was, in his kind of childhood. And it got me thinking, oh my gosh, my son is going to be in puberty soon. And oh my gosh, this massive realization, pornography is like the number one teacher for children, for young adults, for mature adults, of what sex looks like, what intimacy looks like, what connection looks like, how to do the sex act, how to connect and touch other people. As well as the, aggression and the violence and just, the disconnect between people through mainstream pornography. I decided that I had a responsibility as a parent to start to seed and put something out that was an accurate representation of what sensuality and love and care and vulnerability and sensuality can actually look like between people. So I first made a short film. It's available on YouTube. You can go and check it out. It's called The Erotic Heart. And that was the first seeding of what was going to come with Erotica. So Erotica is now an online global film festival that both welcomes in everyday people who want to express and share their unique body, their gender, their sensuality, their expression, whatever that looks like, and have it witnessed and celebrated and shared through our film festival, as well as we also bring through, professional and professional filmmakers who are making more feminine eros focused sensual erotica. So it kind of brings through both, the professional artists, which we love to support, as well as just people who want to make films and want to share like what happens for them, either through self-pleasure or with another person or with a group of people. So it's really beautiful. And I'm so excited this year. You can see, up in the top right-hand side, differently abled. And this is the first time we've had this category. And it's actually came about because last year, a really beautiful person came to the film festival, loved what they saw, and then realized that there was no bodies that represented what their body was. And so they messaged me on Facebook and they told me about that. And they said, can they make a film? And I said, well, of course, absolutely. And they made a film and they submitted it and it was accepted. And it is absolutely gorgeous. And it showcases, what intimacy looks like beyond white, kind of Caucasian women between 20 and 30 with a slightly older guy, which is a lot of what we see kind of mainstream. Yeah, so we're really welcoming in a greater diversity this year through, through gender, through race, through body types, through expressions. There is some explicit content, but most of it is sensual or art.
Beautiful. I'm just going to real quickly let people know the website is eroticafilmfestival.com. And just going through these beautiful categories: self-pleasure, BDSM, kink, education and documentary film, animation, shibari art, abstract poetry film categories. Beautiful. And then you have live performers.
Yes.
And so tell us a little bit about some of the live performers.
So this is a new venture to kind of bring through that live eros performance art and really support artists and performers who have been so deeply impacted by the last couple of years of not being able to perform. So this year we've got 2 live online shows. an opening show and a closing show. And inside each show will be a curation of poetry, spoken word, burlesque, shibari, and will be emceed by a beautiful queer friend who's in the online space. She's a global poet and TEDx speaker, and it feels exciting to be bringing through more male bodies this year as well, which we tend to see an overrepresentation of female bodies and of women in this sort of space. And so we're kind of actively starting to bring in more of that male body, the masculine expression, in a way that's deeply attuned to consent and authenticity.
I'm loving what you're doing. Yeah, everybody's applauding. I'm going to bring up everybody so you can see all the applause.
Yeah, thank you. It's so exciting. And, there's a code there, Awakening World. If you are experiencing financial hardship, then please reach out to me directly, and, our team will be happy to support you. The main thing that we want is for people to have access to what intimacy looks like, to have new reference points and new transmissions of what's possible, so they can share that with somebody, but also build those new pathways to explore and express. So please reach out if you're in a difficult position, and we would love to support you to attend.
That is incredibly generous of you. I'm putting into the Zoom room right now the discount code and the ways people can reach you. I had a dear friend, because I'm older, obviously, than everybody else here, named Candida Royale. And I don't know if you know of her work. Candida, about 30 years ago, created something called Femme. And it was the very first pornography for women that was sacred and beautiful and spiritual. And I interviewed her on the television show that I was doing. We became friends. And then it turned out that one of her top filmmakers, Annie Sprinkle, went to junior high school with me. It's kind of a small world type of thing. Anyway, Candida passed away from cancer, but it's beautiful. She was a really special soul, and she was really, truly the pioneer in this work. And it's beautiful to meet you and know what you're carrying on. So God bless you, Ilsa. And when we get closer to the film festival, I want to do a whole Awakening World just on the Erotica Film Festival. Whatever we can do to support your work, it's so
amazing.
Important.
Thank you.
Yeah. Trish, anything you want to?
I'm so excited. I'm, as a certified sex coach and de-shamifying, we'll call it, the whole sex realm and really making it more human is so deeply important. And really to decenter the white male body is something that I've been, really looking at. So I'm just so excited about your work, and really the diversity piece is like, yes, bring it on. I'm excited to share my show, just a little brief bit of it. As you know, I run a show on Thursday mornings called The Self-Love Show, and it's an opportunity, a free resource, and we've had a few of these people on to really show up and help you find opportunities for self-love. And whatever tool this might be for you, we have many shows at this point. Can you pull up the YouTube, Scott?
Yes. Where will I find that link?
Yeah, we're really committed to offering free resources to anybody who wants that, because we know that not everyone can afford coaching and not everyone can afford therapy. So, find Felipe on the Self-Love Show. He has a fantastic show, and Scott Catamas is on there. And I have yet to rope these beautiful women in yet, but we're hopeful. So if you can and you want to just share some of those, there's lots going on here.
And there it is. You just go to YouTube and put in the Self-Love Show. And that's where you can watch all the previous episodes she's done. And some of these people are amazing. Also, I just want to acknowledge your partner in this, Dawn Light, who does a great job. This was a woman that I referred to you, Khadija, and she's great. And each one of these people, Sean Rhee has been on our show here. So Self-Love Show YouTube channel. And thank you for all that you do to make those shows happen every week, Trish. Thank you.
It's my volunteer work of love.
Let's hear from Felipe Lewis about what he's doing in the world. Felipe, tell us
Mhm.
about your work as a coach and as a teacher.
Well, actually, I want to speak of my volunteer. Just following Trish, I want to speak of my volunteer work in this world because I think it's the most impactful. It's really great to be coaching people one on one and really enjoy it. And but uh, my passion is is to speak to many, is to engage with many, and in the way that it creates community, in the way that it creates groups, in the way that it creates people who get to see each other and engage with each other. So a while back, I've been mentioning that I like to geek out on attachment theory, and so I created 4 years ago. I created a group called the Attachment Community, and it's now grown to about almost 10,000 people, and we've just had to stop people from coming in because things were getting out of hand. So you can imagine 9,500 people who are many of them are insecure, trying to engage with each other, and that could be explosive. But we've managed to create a very supportive and safe group, and people every week, every day, people come to us and say, "This is the most useful group I found. This is the most useful group on Facebook that I'm on. It's the most supportive. It's the most resourceful. I get to just speak up about my attachment issues or my attachment challenges, and there's always somebody who's got something to say to be supportive." And I have a beautiful modmin team that basically keeps things under control as much as possible with minimal amount of controlling, and this allows people to really meet each other, and that's where I feel like the most impact happens is in community, when people get to come together and share about a particular topic, like just like we are right now. But imagine multiply that by 2 or 3 orders of magnitude, what's possible. So much support and so much wisdom arises from people sharing about their own personal experiences, which also brings up the individuality that we were talking about earlier. So beyond that, I love sharing. I love teaching. I love teaching about not just attachment theory, but also emotional, somatic, and primal intelligence, like supporting people learning about touch, learning about how to engage with each other beyond just the words. And attachment theory is it's a fun thing to do online because it doesn't require all three of these things. Uh, but it's really when people come together and put their bodies together, whether just to be in front of each other or together in touch, that I think we get to learn how to develop our nervous system, how to develop a nervous system towards greater security. And that connects with the attachment theory piece. So that's my passion, is to bring people to a greater understanding of their nervous system, of their patterns, and so that they get to enjoy their life just a little bit more every day, because the compulsion of reacting to their environment is no longer there, or they have much more control, or much more their reaction is no longer they're no longer at the mercy of what's happening around them. They have a little bit more choice around it. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at.
So I just wanted to let people know that if you do want to join,
Mm-hmm.
it's on Facebook. I just put
Uh-huh.
in Philippe Lewis Attachment Community and it came right up.
Yeah,
And there are just some really beautiful conversation, documents, questions, answers. So thank
so
you for
many
your
resources.
volunteer work. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
I want to say a quick thing about it. If you decide you want to be on the attachment community, make sure to it's asking you a bunch of questions, and the first question is, where did you hear about the attachment community group? Just mention it's the Awakening World, and this way we'll know where you're coming from and we'll approve you immediately. That'll make things easier.
Well, now that we've heard about your volunteer work, let's hear about your day job. Because you're a great coach, you're Trisha's coach. And tell us, and again, his website for his primary work is exquisitedark.love. Sovereignty is your pivot point. Wow,
Yeah,
tell us about this.
Well, it's interesting. People think of dark often as what most people, what really associate as shadows, like what you don't know yet, and you don't know, you're compelled by it. But for me, dark is really the messiness that makes us human. Like I often say that humans are messy and full of shadows, and so they're just who they are. There's nothing perfect about it. There's just moment to moment to moment trying to figure it out. And so dark love is just the love of the messiness that we are, and there's a sweetness to it, and it takes time to fully appreciate it, just like a good wine, a good Merlot. Merlot is very diverse. There's a lot of taste, and there's a lot going on there, and it requires some slowing down and some real attention to really dive into it. So I love coaching. It's There's something about being one-on-one with someone where you get to feel them fully and get to serve them fully. So the session is about them, it's not about what I perceive of them. It's about what they perceive of themselves. And can I support it? Can I support them in that? Can I add resources to their brain and their body and their perception so that they get to know a little bit more about themselves? And it can be a slow process, or it can be a fast one. Transformation can take half a second, but real growth takes time. And yeah.
Thank you so much for being
Pleasure.
such a wonderful coach and helping to really put the light on the shadow. As a coach, I so appreciate anytime we can make it safe for people to come out of the shadow, whether it's about their kink, their religion, their inner fears, their whatever it is. I believe that shame is the great human epidemic. And whatever we can do to make it safe for people to talk about those things. And we do that as best as we can on the Awakening World. And really, all the people you're seeing today, Trish, Philippe, Ilsa, Viraja, these are all wonderful coaches. And so if you're feeling drawn to any of them to get coaching, reach out to them. They are amazing. Viraja, we kind of started with you, and we're coming back to you. Tell us more about what's going on with you and your coaching at this time.
I love hearing everybody's passion and love being expressed to the world in all the different ways. So I'll start with that. I'm offering a play shop series, and it's inspired by the transformation that I've been going through, and the nervous system healing and the attachment healing and the connecting in with myself and my own sovereignty that's coming more and more online. And so it's focusing on optimizing inner intimacy through the also through kind of the lens of the nervous system and self-love, where as we are able to relax, able to experience more safety and connection, then our nervous system starts to unhook from that survival. And then we can kind of get a little movement happening. And then we can hopefully access more of our play, of our enjoyment, of our pleasure, of our connection. And then as we get that connection with others and with ourselves, then we get the transformation. Then we can build the mirror neurons, and we can implement what it is that we're learning and what feels so good to us, because we can actually feel it. We can actually register it and feel it and enjoy it. So it's been really fun to do these play shops. It's like we're creating a new playground, the one that's beyond the trauma, the imprints, the past programming, the limitations, the fears, and really collect the parts that haven't had this opportunity to really be embraced and shown and healed and have fun. So it's a play shop series. You're welcome to opt in, anyone that's on here or anyone else, and you can get the recordings from the prior ones and participate live on the Zoom play shop playground with us. And I think I'm really wanting just to celebrate with some of my peers in the community too. It's like I have worked so hard in the hard that I'm like, oh, it's okay to have some fun. And of course, like I am a shadow, like stalker, edge seeker. Like I go for it. I have no, like, bring it on. And wow, it's good time for us to like actually be enjoying ourselves too, and not just need to be like licking the wounds all the time, or picking the scabs off each other's wounds so we can like maybe get deeper healing. It's like, you know, yay. And I'm noticing this trend. It's like there's, yay, right? This trend, like more and more of us are becoming aware of like the impact of things on how we feel and on our nervous system, and like new choices that we can make, and you know, that it's okay to be in our pleasure. Look, we have an erotica film festival, like going international with people submitting things from all over the world to like enjoy our embodiment, and be seen in that and celebrated in that. And you know, that is, you know, courageous, and it's also so natural. Yeah, like the courage is like finding our way back to our essential nature of being this aliveness, natural life force energy that's flowing. So I love doing that with my clients. I do one-on-one work and group work. I have a women's group, a self-love lab, where we get to women's discovery circle for 6 months, where we're going into some of these territories in the mind, the heart, the body, our consciousness, our sexuality, and kind of peeling back the layers to achieve the integration of all those parts, so we can just be in our alignment and our authenticity and the enjoyment of that, and to have a safe container of the group so that we can see and witness each other. Is it's it's like, well, this is the way it should be, right, everyone? This is the way it should be. Yeah, yeah. So that's 3 categories. I feel like if we all are like sort of self-sourcing, either on our own way or with a coach or our community or our own personal journaling, it's like, where is there a place that may need repair? And don't get just stuck there, like that thing of like I have done so many times. I was just referring, like, we can go in the pack and like clean stuff up, we need to do that, but then it's like, where can we reclaim? Like once we repair, now we have like a more cohesive capacity in our beingness to like reclaim our energy, reclaim our truth, reclaim our essence, reclaim our our knowing. And then the last one, this is the part we're talking about, is like rejoicing. Like, let's rejoice and have the celebration and have the fun and have the play, and like up level the joy factor on our lives and on the planet, and be that beacon out in the world. So that's the work. That's the body of my work these days.
It's beautiful, beautiful. You know, in all that, I didn't get a chance to actually give the name of your website, and it's so what who you are, Viraja. Her actual URL is receivemorelove.com. So I want to encourage everybody, let's all go to receivemorelove.com. Let's practice giving more love. And really, that's what we're seeing, you know, whether it's through Ilsa's coaching and her film festival, Trish's self-love show, Felipe's commitment to helping people understand the science of attachment. These are all, and that's what the theme of our show is. You know, the question is, what is our mission? Our mission is to receive more love. You know, it really is. So I love that's the name of your website.
Thank you.
This was a very quick 95 minutes. I really admire each and every one of you. Thank you for the work you're doing in the world. And yes to more joy, yes to more pleasure. I had David Prema was on our show about 6 weeks ago, and it was shortly after the invasion of Ukraine. And they're traveling, they're in the middle of a world tour. And she said, you know, wherever we're going, people are asking, is it okay to have joy? Knowing that there's all this suffering in the world, knowing that this is happening, can we still feel joy? And she brought it up and talked about it. And I just want to remind what the Buddha said, always take the middle road. Always take the middle road. Take time to mourn and to grieve and to feel the pain of the world or of your life. And take time to be joyful and to enjoy the pleasure as well. and notice, wow, am I hanging out a little too much on the grieving side and swimming in the, the constant pool of pain? Or am I kind of spiritually bypassing that part of my life and just focusing on the pleasure? So may we all support each other to find that balance, that middle road that the Buddha spoke of. Well, this is,
There's a
Trish
finger.
is giving me the finger. I'm getting the finger again.
So you always do this. You always shut it off before we can say thank you, Scott, for all of your commitment to love and to compassion. You put in a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of effort to make these shows and support communities of people, not only to be seen, but to get their message out, to have people come in to get support. So I just want to, let's give a big love and twinkle to Scott.
I appreciate that. And it is true. A lot does go into putting these shows together. And it's my joy and it's my service for sure. So thank you. And speaking of all these shows, thank you, Trish. I love you too. Speaking of these shows, this is, of course, the first night of our weekend of Awakening World. And we have some really wonderful guests coming tomorrow night and then on Sunday morning. So just a reminder, if you're enjoying this theme, please come back again tomorrow night. And we actually have a really special early Zoom room show tomorrow. One of the students of the Twin Ray is going to do a KES healing experience for people. And then we've got Om Heals. That's Jennifer Hill's organization. And some of her best healers coming on. And so we're going to get more healing experiences and tools and wonderful music. Tatiana Speed is coming back, and her mother, who it turns out is an incredible concerto pianist, is going to come back and play piano. And we're going to have Omashar. Omashar will be playing music again tomorrow night. So we're excited about that. And then on Sunday, Jonathan and Heike Hudson, they're a beautiful couple that do powerful work, profound work, helping people to really change their emotional resonance and heal deep wounds and come back into real homeostasis with life, are going to be with us. And the beautiful Josiane Bonte is going to be back. She's an incredible therapist and healer specializing in racial and sexual wounding. And so we're going to go deep throughout the weekend. So do join us. Thank you again, Trish, and beautiful Viraja and Ilsa, and beautiful Philippe. I don't want to just say beautiful about the women. Trish is helping me with that.
Good with that.
And Philippe, you are very beautiful. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. If you enjoyed this show, and it appears from your comments that many of you did, please share it out with other people. Invite people, let them know about the Awakening World. Send them to the globalpeacetribe.com. And we look forward to seeing all of you, hopefully tomorrow night or later this weekend. Take care, everybody. Have a beautiful evening.